that bring you to the heart of the continent. Focus on Africa from BBC News.
Live from London, this is World News America. The White House defends President Trump's move to pause US federal funding as Democrats warn of chaos. Tens of thousands more displaced Palestinians make their way back to northern Gaza. More than 350,000 people have already returned. And we take a look at some of the victims of the war in Ukraine. The BBC speaks to one woman who says Russian forces wiped out 3 generations of her family. Hello, I'm Samantha Simmonds. Welcome to BBC News. The administration of US President Donald Trump has frozen what could amount to trillions of dollars of government funding. A memorandum from the White House Budget Office calls for a pause on nearly all federal grants and loans. Let's get some of the day's other news now. Serbia's Prime Minister has quit after weeks of nationwide protests over the collapse of a railway station roof which killed 15 people. Tens of thousands of people joined recent protests expressing anger over allegations of corruption and incompetence. Serbia's main opposition party says the resignation of Milos Vučević is an attempt to buy time. Russian state media say Moscow's first official delegation to visit Syria since the toppling of its former ally Bashar al-Assad has arrived in Damascus. Members of the delegation are expected to meet Syria's new leaders. Russia's hopes of retaining its 2 military bases in Tartus and Latakia are likely to be the focus of talks. Russia, which intervened militarily to help Assad stay in power during Syria's long civil war, granted him refuge in December. A new study suggests climate change was a major factor in the recent devastating wildfires in Los Angeles. Decades of droughts followed by heavy rainfall made vegetation across the city and surrounding areas more vulnerable to burning, as Justin Rolat explains. Plenty more, of course, on all the stories we're covering on the BBC News website and app. That's it from me for the moment. I'm Samantha Simmonds. Do stay with us here on BBC News. Thanks for watching.
And if you want to carry on watching Newsnight, please turn over to BBC Two or watch on iPlayer.
Do stay with us here on BBC News for all the latest headlines in the US and around the world from the team here in Washington.
Live from London, this is BBC News. A US judge temporarily blocks parts of a federal funding freeze ordered by the Trump administration minutes before it was due to begin. Tens of thousands more displaced Palestinians make their way back to northern Gaza. More than 350,000 people have already returned. Rebel fighters say they have captured Goma's airport in eastern DR Congo as they continue their push for full control of the city. Hello and welcome, I'm Samantha Simmonds. We begin in the US, where a judge has temporarily blocked parts of President Donald Trump's sweeping order to halt federal funding just before it was due to take effect. The judge's order lasts until Monday at 5 p.m. local time. The anticipated freeze was set to affect billions of dollars intended for federal programs, including disaster relief and cancer research. Lance Trover, Rebecca Percy, really interesting to get your thoughts. Thanks for being with us. I want to bring you some breaking news just coming into us from India now, and there has been a crush at a huge Hindu religious festival. The accident happened when people who were sleeping by the riverbanks in Prayagraj were trampled by others who'd taken a dip in the waters. It's being reported that several people are feared to have died. Up to 70 million people are expected to attend Wednesday's bathing day at the Mar Kumbh, one of the world's biggest religious festivals. So reports there that there has been a crush when people were sleeping by the riverbanks in Prayagraj. We'll bring you more on that as it comes into us.
For 2 years, had ongoing leverage to have the U.S.
Cindy, I'm sorry to come in, but we are out of time. Cindy Corwell, thank you very much for joining us and telling us more about the situation in DRC. Stay with us here on BBC News. This is BBC News. I'm Samantha Simmonds. The headlines. Tens of thousands more displaced Palestinians make their way back to northern Gaza. More than 350,000 people have already returned. We take a look at some of the victims of the war in Ukraine. The BBC speaks to one woman who says Russian forces wiped out 3 generations of her family. And the White House says it's looking at the national security implications of DeepSeek. To the Middle East now, where Jordanian helicopters have been dropping aid into Gaza, the first supplies to arrive there since the ceasefire was declared between Israel and Hamas. It comes as thousands of Palestinians continue to make the journey back to their homes. Russia's army says its forces have captured a large village in Ukraine's eastern Kharkiv region. Dvorichna has now changed hands 3 times during the conflict. The Russian military continues to make advances in eastern Ukraine. Our senior international correspondent Orla Guerin met a woman who lost her mother, daughter and grandson on the same day in November. Here's her story. Let's return to our breaking news coming into us from India now, and this is the news that people have feared to have been hurt following a crush. This is at a huge Hindu religious festival in northern India. There is speculation, there are thoughts that some have been seriously injured, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. One official has said some people have been injured, but does add that no one is in a serious condition, so unclear information coming out. Just at the moment, officials say up to 100 million people are expected to attend the bathing day. This is at the Kumbh Mela, one of the world's largest religious festivals. We have got a team of reporters on the ground there trying to find out the latest from there, but officials, we understand, are now making announcements on loudspeakers asking people to step away from the banks after they take a holy dip in the rivers. And there is a large number of police and National Disaster Response Force officials near the confluence, and they are constantly urging people to keep on moving. The Kumbh Mela festival is in India's Prayagraj city. Millions have been heading through to Sangam. This is the confluence of sacred rivers in the city. It's held every 12 years. The Kumbh is often called the world's largest gathering of humanity, and Wednesday is the biggest day of the festival. Officials have said that up to 100 million people are expected to attend that bathing day, and Hindus are there because they believe that bathing in the sacred water will cleanse them of sins and help them attain salvation. Plenty more details on the BBC News website. Do stay with us here on BBC News. Thanks for watching. Live from London, this is BBC News. A US judge temporarily blocks parts of a federal funding freeze ordered by the Trump administration minutes before it was due to begin. Vital aid is airlifted into Gaza as hundreds of thousands of Palestinians continue their return home. We have a special report. And we take a look at some of the victims of the war in Ukraine. The BBC speaks to one woman who says Russian forces wiped out 3 generations of her family. Hello and welcome. I'm Samantha Simmonds. We begin in the US, where a judge has temporarily blocked parts of President Donald Trump's sweeping order to halt federal funding just before it was due to take effect. The judge's order lasts until Monday at 5 p.m. local time. The anticipated freeze was set to affect billions of dollars intended for federal programs, including disaster relief and cancer research. Many people are feared to have been hurt following a crush at a huge Hindu religious festival in northern India. There's been no confirmation on the number of people injured or dead, but officials have confirmed that a stampede-like situation occurred. And a BBC reporter says they've seen more than a dozen ambulances coming out of the festival. These are live pictures from the site of this festival. Organisers say up to 70 million people are expected to attend the bathing day at the Kumbh Mela, one of the world's largest religious festivals, in the northern city of Prayagraj, where people are still heading to the water. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. The crisis in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is intensifying, with the AFP news agency reporting that more than 100 people have been killed in the city of Goma as fighting between the M23 rebel group and government forces escalates. The news agency says nearly 1,000 others are wounded, based on a tally drawn from city hospitals. The UN says that dead bodies have been found lying in the streets as M23 fighters push further into Goma, a city of 2 million people. And plenty more on that story and all of the day's top stories on the BBC News website and app. That's all from me for the moment. I'll be back a little later with more on the day's top stories. Stay with us here on BBC News. Thanks for watching.
This is BBC News. We'll have the headlines for you at the top of the hour, which is straight after this programme.
Live from London, this is BBC News. These are live pictures from northern India, where many people are feared to have been hurt following a crush at a huge Hindu religious festival. A US judge temporarily blocks parts of a federal funding freeze ordered by the Trump administration just minutes before it was due to begin. Vital aid is airlifted into Gaza as hundreds of thousands of Palestinians continue their return home. We have a special report. Hello and welcome. I'm Samantha Simmonds. We begin with breaking news from northern India. Many people are feared to have been hurt following a crush at a huge Hindu religious festival. There's been no confirmation of how many people have been injured or killed. A BBC reporter says they've seen more than a dozen ambulances coming out of the festival crowds. OK, Professor Donald Kettle, really interesting to get your thoughts and analysis. Thank you.
Good to be with you.
Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. US President Donald Trump is expected to receive his first visit by a foreign leader next week. He's invited Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House on Friday the 5th. On Tuesday, the UN Security Council held an urgent meeting on Israel's ban of the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees, which takes effect in 2 days. The move will end UNRWA's operations on Israeli land, including occupied East Jerusalem. Stay with us here on BBC News. Thanks for watching.
Hello there. With these low pressure systems which have brought